very good evening. From stories around the world to stories here at home, this is the National News broadcast. I'm Vidushni Sadish Kumar.
A very good evening indeed. I'm Charita Prarachi, and now let's move on to the headlines for tonight's news.
The second school term has been extended by 2 more weeks. Provision of 5,000 rupee allowance to eligible persons in the Western Province is to be resumed. Distribution of 10,000 rupee food bag free of charge to quarantine families is being implemented on the district level. The program to provide essential food to people in curfew areas is to be expedited. The number of fully cured corona-infected persons in the island has been increased to 5,249. Chief of the World Health Organization has been subjected to self-quarantine.
On to those and other stories in detail now, and starting off with local stories. The Presidential Task Force on Economic Revival and Elimination of Poverty has decided to grant 5,000 rupee allowance this time as well to the eligible persons in curfew-imposed Western Province. Chairman of the task force, Basil Rajapaksa, says that necessary allocations have already been received. Chairman of the task force made these remarks at a discussion held at the Temple Trees today. Chairman of the task force, Basil Rajapaksa, said that 5,000 rupee allowance should be provided to the eligible families in the Colombo, Gampaha and Kalutara districts. He also requested to act according to the advice of health authorities in maintaining activities pertaining to agriculture, plantations and factories.
උපදෙස් මත කටයුතු කළීමට හැකි උදව්වක් ලබා දෙන්න කියන ඉල්ලීම තමයි කරන්නේ.
It has been pointed out that the meeting that the responsibility of the quarantining infected persons and their associates lies with the respective divisional secretariats, divisions offices. The rural committee is extending assistance in this regard. The economic centres also remained open, giving prominence to health guidelines. Mr. Basil Rajapaksa further said that the COVID-19 menace will be overcome through the deployment of additional teams without causing obstructions to the general public. He also said that attention has been focused on functioning of industries. Chairman Basil Rajapaksa said that all assistance must be given under health guidelines to those fulfilling services. He added that nobody will be deprived of their jobs. The regional cooperatives will also engage in the program to distribute essential food items to the residences. Chairman Basil Rajapaksa said many have thought that they would not be able to repay loan installments. He added that they have paid $4.2 billion of loans this year alone.
ඒක නිසා කිසිම කෙනෙක්ට රැකියා හිමිවීමක් නොවන විදියට වග බලා ගන්න ඕන. මේ 5000 හම්බ වෙනවයි කියලා කර්මාන්ත ශාලාව හෝ ආයතන ගෙදර ඉන්න ඉඩ සලස්සන්න එපා. මෙහෙම නෙවෙයි දැන් එළවලු ලොරියක් වීසි කරොත් එහෙම ඊට පස්සේ ආපහු එළවලු ලොරියක් ගන්න සල්ලි කොහෙන් හොයන්නද? ඒ වගේම වැඩ පොලක් වැහුවට පස්සේ ආයිත් ආරම්භ කරනවායි කියන එක හරි අමාරුයි. දවසේ කඩයක්පන් හදලා විකුණන එක්කෙනාගේ කඩයක්පන් ටික වීසි කරාට පස්සේ අද කී දෙනෙක් ඉන්නවද දැන් කොළඹ කිසිම කඩයක්පන් විකුණන කට්ටිය නැහැ. ඒ කට්ටිය කොහොමද ආපහු රස්සාව පටන් ගන්න ජීවත් වෙන්න පටන් ගන්න. ඒකයි අපි හදන්නේ මේ අනිත් පළාත් වලට මේක නොගිහින් මොකද ඒවයිත් වැහුවොත් එහෙම ඒ කඩාවැටෙන
People's representatives, ministry secretaries and other government officials in the Western Province were also present at the meeting.
The program to provide a 10,000 rupee bag of food free of charge to each of the quarantine families is being implemented on the district level. The program has commenced in the instructions of the President and the Prime Minister following a discussion at the Prime Minister's office. The meeting was presided over by Chairman of the National Task Force on Economic Revival and Elimination of Poverty, Basil Rajapaksa. 2 bags of food valued at 5,000 rupees each, sufficient for 14 days, are being provided to every family undergoing quarantine. The process comes under the supervision of district secretaries or divisional secretaries. Meanwhile, the government has taken measures to provide once again 5,000 rupee allowance to low-income earners in the Western Province as a relief measure to face the epidemic. The work is being coordinated through district secretaries, divisional secretaries, Gramaniladaris, rural committees and security divisions. District Secretary Pradeep Yasaratna says 75 million rupees has been allocated for families undergoing quarantine in the Colombo district. 13 district secretariats are presently engaged in distributing dried food sacks to quarantine families. The program to provide relief to families undergoing quarantine in the Bedwell Divisional Secretariat Division has commenced yesterday. 416 families are scheduled to receive food bags valued at 10,000 rupees. Distribution of 10,000 rupee food bags to families undergoing quarantine in the Kurunegala district has also commenced yesterday. 250 families are undergoing quarantine in the Mallavapita Divisional Secretariat Division. District Secretary Kurunegala R.M.R. Ratnayak has presided over the event to distribute food bags to 1,461 quarantine families in 30 Divisional Secretariat divisions in the district. The cost of the project is 114 million rupees. The Kergaon District Secretariat has also commenced distribution of dried food to quarantine families in the district today.
And meanwhile, the government has introduced a program to bring to the doorstep of the people in curfew-imposed areas the essential food stocks. Accordingly, the shops and pharmacies in the respective areas are entrusted with the task to fulfill the consumer requirement. Traders who are willing to transport food to other residences should do so under the permission of the respective divisional secretariat division officers. Police media spokesman DIG Ajit Rohana has disclosed this fact at a media briefing held in Colombo today. All service institutions must strictly adhere to all protective health guidelines. The relevant circular was issued yesterday. Special vigilance should be maintained by consumers in dealing with the coins and currency notes. The curfew imposed in the Western Province has been extended till 5 a.m. on the 9th of this month. The curfew in the Haliaguda Police Division, Kurunegala Municipal Council Limit and Kuliapitiya Police Divisions will also be implemented till 5 a.m. on the 9th. The police media spokesman further said that permission has been granted to engage in services for persons coming for services needs during the quarantine period. 102 institutions named by the government have been given permission. A circular with relevant instructions has been issued by the acting IGP. The Hatton District and Magistrate Court has ordered to pay a fine of 3,000 rupees to a trader in Hatton Town who has violated quarantine laws. The Kesalwatha police station has commenced an operations today to apprehend residents who have disregarded health guidelines. The police have given a warning to those who are loitering at Sitavaka Police Road block on the Avisavelle Colombo Main Road without curfew permits. 179 persons who have violated quarantine curfew have been arrested yesterday. 29 vehicles were apprehended. 1,812 persons have been arrested and 282 vehicles apprehended since October 4th, the day of commencement of the quarantine curfew. The Litro Gas Kalanka company has introduced a program to bring to those gas in Western Province. The consumer could contact the hotline 1311 or download the Litro Gas home delivery app to receive its service. And meanwhile, the number of fully cured COVID-19 patients has been increased to 5,249. 344 recovered persons have left the hospitals today. 169 COVID-19 patients were identified in the country today. 121 of the identified patients belong to the associates of the Paliaguda cluster. The remaining 43 patients were those undergoing quarantine at the quarantine centers. The 21st COVID-related death was reported in Sri Lanka yesterday. The victim, a 40-year-old person, died at the Valisara Chest Hospital. The deceased was a resident of Mahara and have entered hospital on the 23rd of this month due to high blood pressure and infections of the respiratory system. He was identified as a COVID victim in the second PCR tests. The funeral took place at the Kasagahavat crematorium. The epidemiology unit says that 27-year-old person who has died upon admission to Panadra Hospital was not a COVID-19 patient. It has been erroneously reported that this was the 22nd COVID death in the country.
Out of that, 6,136 cases are still under treatment. And out of that, all the cases, 7,582 cases are related to Minuwangoda and Paliaguda COVID cluster that we recently identified just 1 month ago. And also yesterday, we have identified another 397 cases. 41 are among the people who are under quarantine after that exposed to COVID-19 patients, and the balance 356 were reported from the samples taken at hospitals and in the community among the highly suspicious cases. And out of that, 79 cases are from Colombo Municipal Council area. And also the 21st death was reported yesterday. That is a 40 years old male who was living in the Mahara MOH area in Gampaha district and having some chronic diseases, and was recently admitted to Valisara Chest Hospital for respiratory tract infection. And after discharge, when he was at home, that he has developed COVID-19 and succumbed to the illness.
135 police officials were reported to have been afflicted with the COVID-19 disease. The Ministry of Health had decided to seek more assistance for private hospitals for PCR tests on COVID-19 infected persons. Minister of Health Pavitra Vanyarachi has presided over a special discussion at the ministry today to enlighten private hospitals on measures to be followed in this regard. Accordingly, steps will be taken to regularize PCR tests in private hospitals to enhance standards of such tests and to increase PCR testing capacity. The tests are to be carried out under the direction of the Ministry of Health. Minister Mahindanand Alutgamage says a program is being prepared to reopen all economic centres on the 4th of this month and to distribute vegetables and dried food. He made these remarks engaging in an observational tour at the Ratmalana Economic Centre today. Tourism activities in the tourist bungalows and campsites belonging to the Department of Wildlife Conservation have been temporarily suspended due to the corona pandemic. A communique issued by the department says that order comes into effect from today.
The Minister of Education has decided to further extend the school vacation of the second term by 2 more weeks. Accordingly, the third school term has been postponed to the 23rd of this month. Secretary to the Ministry of Education, Professor Kapila Pereira, said that the third school term was scheduled to end on the 9th of November. He added that according to advice of the Director General of Health Services, commencement of the school term has been postponed by 2 weeks. On your other stories, editor of Government Medical Officers Association, Dr. Haritha Alutge urges the public to be responsible in their functions while adhering to health guidelines imposed by the government to curtail the spread of COVID-19 outbreak in the country. Well, he made these remarks during a media briefing today.
We have proposed many things, including the restrictions on district borders and also the restriction of movement of the people. And on the other hand, we have suggested to revisit the quarantine criteria, and on the other hand, admission criteria, where the levels of care should be different to 3 categories of people who are identified, such as asymptomatic patients, mild symptom patients, and the severe and high-risk patients. And all these things were discussed in the relevant forums, and yesterday's discussion at the task force by His Excellency the President, with the declaration of his decisions, clearly indicate those issues which we raised during the last few weeks is been of national concern, and the President has taken the correct decision. Therefore, we have observed that the majority of the responsibility after the government has taken the correct decision, now it's rely on the people. Therefore, we urge all the civilians and all the groups in the country to abide by the health guidelines and behave responsibly so that we can curtail the further spread of the disease out of the Western province, because now the restrictions are imposed within the Western province. Therefore, we hope that the country will go ahead with these restrictions for some time, and therefore we can curtail the further spread of the disease.
Here's the world update of COVID-19 pandemic now. Well, from the World Update, coronavirus is continuing its spread across the world with more than 46.54 million confirmed cases in around 190 countries, while the global COVID-19 tally surpassed the 1.2 million mark. And the virus is surging in many regions, and several countries which had noticeable success in suppressing initial outbreaks are also seeing infections rise again. Coronavirus cases have risen over the last few months in several regions of the world, while Europe is currently seeing the steepest rise in new cases. The World Health Organization has warned the global death toll could hit 2 million before an effective vaccine is widely in use. The WHO has also indicated that roughly 1 in 10 people worldwide may have already been infected, yet that the vast majority of the world remains at risk. The number of COVID-19 cases in the Americas made up nearly half of the global total to reach more than 20.4 million cases, while Europe and Southeast Asia reported more than 11.06 million and 9.3 million cases respectively. The United States topped all countries in the world in confirmed coronavirus cases and deaths. The total number of COVID-19 cases in the United States surpassed 9.19 million. Yesterday, the country's cumulative death toll count reached 230,884. Many U.S. media has claimed that October was the worst month, as most states and regions were seeing a rising trend, with 49 states and territories are in an upward trajectory of new COVID-19 cases. India ranks second in the world in terms of caseload, reporting an overall tally of 8.23 million cases. India recorded 45,231 new cases of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, while 496 COVID-19 related deaths were reported yesterday, recording more than 120 deaths overall thus far. Maharashtra, the worst affected state in the country with total 1.68 million cases with 44,024 deaths, logged the third highest daily COVID numbers at 5,369. Meanwhile, health experts and scientists have warned of a rise in cases as winter sets in and people venture out amid the ongoing festival season. Meanwhile, Spain, France and the UK have all recorded more than 1 million cases, and several others are seeing the highest number of new infections since the start of the pandemic. Lockdowns and other restrictions have been introduced in several worst affected regions in an effort to control the latest surge in infections. Germany began a month-long partial lockdown today as part of efforts to curb the momentum of the coronavirus that has infected 500,000 people across the country. The new so-called lockdown light came into force as the infections of COVID-19 have been increasing sharply in recent weeks. The new restrictions are a lighter version of the lockdown seen in the earlier half of the year, as schools and shops will remain open, churches will be allowed to hold services, and protests will not be banned. Well, nevertheless, all restaurants and bars will be closed, meetings in public will be restricted to only 2 households, and all recreational centers will be shut. In the meantime, Austria and Portugal also announced new restrictions in an attempt to curb the spread of coronavirus recently. Russia reported 18,257 new coronavirus cases today, pushing the national tally to 1.65 million since the pandemic began. Russia has also reported 238 deaths in the last 24 hours, taking the death toll to 28,473. While in Latin America, Brazil has more than 5.54 million confirmed cases, although the number of daily new infections has slowed. Argentina and Colombia are 2 of only 9 countries to record more than 1 million cases, and daily cases are rising in both. Meanwhile, Africa has recorded around 1.8 million cases, though the true extent of the pandemic is not known as testing rates are low in the region. South Africa, with more than 700,000 cases and 19,000 deaths, is still the worst affected country in the continent.
And meanwhile, the Director General of World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, has said that he is self-quarantining after he was in contact with a tested one person with positive of COVID-19. In a tweet yesterday, he added that he was symptom-free and feeling well. The chief of the World Health Organization wrote in a tweet, he is well and without symptoms, but he will have self-quarantine in line with protocols. During his quarantine, his work will from home. In another tweet, he said it is important to comply with with health guidelines to break chains of COVID-19 transmission, suppress the virus and to protect health systems. The WHO chief posted lastly that he will continue to work with his colleagues in solidarity to save lives and protect the vulnerable. The 55-year-old former Ethiopian foreign minister has been at the forefront of the United Nations Health Agency efforts to battle the global pandemic. Continuing with more local stories. The 4th anniversary of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, which scored many victories for Sri Lanka, challenging traditional political parties and all other forces, falls tomorrow. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was able to get the ruling power by establishing records in the political history of Sri Lanka within a short period of establishing the party. Within the defeat of presidential election in 2014, Mr. Basil Rajapaksa shoulders the responsibility of establishing Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna on the instructions of Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was established on 2nd November 2016 with a strong organizing network and the determined process. The May-Day rally at Goldface Green in 2017, before passing 1 year of establishing Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, is considered the biggest political rally in the history. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna contested local government elections in 2018 and as youngest political movement in Sri Lanka. At the election, Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was able to win more than 70% of local government institutions. It is a significant political incident in the political history that Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa was named as the presidential candidate by 2019 by Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, becoming the 7th executive president of the country. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was able to obtain a 2/3 majority, enhancing a victory at the past general election. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna is also consisted of the highest number of trade union network belonging to a political party. More than 250 trade unions are working with the Podujana Progressive Trade Union Centre. The party has a network representing all strata of the society. The government is successfully managing the COVID-19 pandemic, which has become a global crisis. According to the instructions of a party founder, Basil Rajapaksa, it has been decided to cancel ceremonies organised island-wide to mark the 4th anniversary of the party due to the pandemic situation. The government is taking measures to protect the country and the people while rectifying economic issues created by the previous inefficient administration. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, which was created to meet aspirations of the people, will move forward under a People's Friendly program to meet the target. The government is taking measures to successfully control the COVID-19 pandemic, which has become a global crisis. It has been decided to cancel island-wide ceremonies scheduled to celebrate the Peramuna's 4th anniversary on the instructions of the SLPP founder Basil Rajapaksa. Priority of the government is to give prominence to the security of the people. The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, which has been created to fulfill the people's aspirations, will go forward through a people-oriented program. General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Attorney at Law and Parliamentarian Sagar Karivasam, issuing a communique, says that the party has been successful in bringing many historic victories to the motherland, challenging all traditional political forces within a short period. Sri Lanka is also facing the threat of strong COVID pandemic, which is being confronted by the entire world. He adds that, however, Sri Lanka is effectively managing the spread of the disease. The communique further says that SLPP has been successful in paving the way for a bright future of the people in the past 4 years. It reiterates that the Peramuna is committed to safeguard values and common heritage of the people. The General Secretary in his message also extended thanks to the party activists and comrade political organizations for their dedication and commitment to strengthen the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna.
General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, parliamentarian and attorney at law, Sagar Karivasam says that they are in the process of utilizing with the maximum transparency the funds of the COVID-19 health and social security donated by the general public. Well, he was responding to a query raised by Samagijana Balawege parliamentarian Nalin Bandara at a media briefing yesterday. Parliamentarian Sagar Karivasam also said that the COVID-19 fund was commenced on the 20th of March under the instructions of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. So far, a sum of 1,675 million rupees has been accumulated. A sum of 100 million rupees out of the fund has been utilized to purchase necessary equipment for PCR tests. The Ministry of Health has coordinated the purchasing. 100 million rupees have been spent to enlighten the general public on the corona pandemic. A further 87 million rupees has been allocated for hospital maintenance. A further 100 million rupees has been used to uplift laboratory facilities at the Batticaloa Hospital. General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Podjana Peramuna parliamentarian and attorney-at-law Sagar Kariwasam said that the COVID fund was created at the inception of the first wave. Salaries of government servants were contributed in large measures. Businesses and private sectors have also donated.
And meanwhile, the Ministry of Health says that the COVID-19 pandemic condition is subjected to variations from time to time. The present state of the virus is reported to at alert level 3. Therefore, the Health Ministry informs the general public to restrict their activities. Accordingly, the distance among persons must be maintained at all times. The people should maintain in their homes as much as possible. Another significant guideline is to follow the protective measures such as washing hands and using sanitizers to kill the germs. The face mask should be worn in the appropriate manner in all instances. Only 2 persons are allowed to leave the residence. They are engaged only in essential services and or other unpermitted work. People should leave their homes only to fulfill their essential requirements. Permission has been granted in public transportation to carry passengers up to 75% of seat capacity. The maximum number of passengers in private hiring vehicles should be restricted to 2 persons. In other types of vehicles, passenger load should be restricted to 50% of the seat capacity. The maintenance of essential services such as electricity, water, telecommunications, filling stations, LP gas centres, motor garages, tyre services, post and courier services should be carried out within the minimum number of employees. Staff in the government and private sector should be reduced to the minimum level. The opportunities should be provided to the workers to engage in their duties from home if possible. In the event of conducting export-related manufacturing centres, all measures should be taken to provide necessary safe lodgings and transport facilities to the employees. The relevant instructions could be obtained from the regional medical officers. When entering consumers to supermarkets, only 50% of the space capacity should be facilitated. Further details in this regard should be published in the website of the Ministry of Health. In the conducting of shopping complexes, only 50% of the space capacity should also be facilitated. Permission is not granted to conduct meetings in shopping complexes or to engage in recreational activities in such places. Further details in this regard is published in the website of the Ministry of Health. In the event of entering banks, financial institutions, cafeterias, betting centres, laundries, retail shops, saving centres, clothing centres, barber shops, beauty parlours, communication centres and economic centres, only 50% of the space capacity should also be facilitated. Further details in this regard is published in the website of the Ministry of Health. Full capacity of space could be maintained in agriculture, street vending and construction. Both such allocations will have to be carried out according to medical advice. Further details in this regard appears in the website of the Ministry of Health. Funerals not related to deaths of COVID-19 infections should be conducted with the presence of not more than 25 persons. Boarding houses should be maintained according to the guidelines of the Ministry of Health. Lodging should not be provided to newcomers. Permissions is not granted to maintain cinema halls, children's parks, musical concerts, beach parties, swimming pools and nightclubs and spa salons as well. Daycare centres and preschools should be maintained according to the instructions provided by the Ministry of Health. The maximum capacity should be restricted to 50% of the space. Relevant health guidelines of the respective fields is published separately in the website of the Ministry of Health, www.health.gov.lk.
Well, reports have been received from many parts of the island regarding pinkhammers to bless countrymen in the face of the corona pandemic. A week-long chanting of the Ratana Sutra is prominent among such meritorious acts. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa has requested the Mahasangha recently to recite Ratana Sutra centering on all Viharas in the country, extending blessings to the people. Chief incumbent Theras of the Viharas in the area have attended a session to recite the sacred sutra in the Imaduwa town in Gaul. It has been planned to chant the Ratana Sutra at the Virahena Vidyaratana Pirivena in Nathandiya till the elimination of the pandemic. A week-long Ratana Sutra chanting ceremony has commenced at the Isurusumana Vihara in Minneria yesterday. Ratana Sutra recitation at the Randupata Uposatagara Vihara in Mathura has ended yesterday. Bhikkhus were brought to the Pinkama premises from in front of the Botry in Mathura. State Minister Vijitha Berugoda, Parliamentarian Nipuna Ranawaka were among those who have attended the event. A Ratana Sutra recital organized by devotees attached to the Vijragiri Vihara in Tangol was also held yesterday. It was organized in parallel to the annual Katna Pinkama of the Vihara. A group including State Minister Kanaka Herath was present to listen to Pirit chanting blessings at the Kirivandaniya Purana Vihara in Rambukana yesterday. The Ratana Sutra will also be recited at the Sri Singhala Sima Ramaya in Katugastura for a period of 1 week. A week-long Ratana Sutra chanting is also being conducted at Tetri Sumangala Pirivena Vihara in Mahakovana Kurunagala. The Ministry of Buddha Sasana, Religious and Cultural Affairs requests all Sri Lankans to light a lamp at 6:45 p.m. on the 4th of this month, wishing the eradication of the COVID-19 pandemic from the entire world. Well, with that, stay tuned for foreign news coming up next.